Hi, good evening, folks, and welcome to Here's the Deal. I'm your host, Shiloh, and welcome to the show. We got kind of an impromptu show tonight. Before we get into our guest, I was just going to let people know we're calling all the Patriots in the Fargo, West Fargo, Grand Forks, Carrington, Castleton, Cooperstown, and Kindred area to get involved in your guys' reorg meetings out there. We really need a lot of patriots out there to fight the good fight and keep the battle going, and so we can take our state back. So, with that being said, we have a guest tonight. We have Julie Neidlinger, and she is from Lone Prairie Art. She writes blogs, and she's actually quite a person here. I've been learning a little bit about her here the last half hour or so. Um, she attended her reorg meeting down there in District 30 in the Bismarck area, and she wrote a blog today about it. And so we're going to have her on to discuss what she had seen, and we'll go from there. So with that, here's Julie. How are you, Julie?
Doing good. Thanks for having me on, Shiloh.
Thanks for being on. You know, it was kind of short notice, and I do apologize for that. So let's get right into it. Before we talk about your article, I'd like to um, point people in your direction as far as your website and get people to know you. So if we could just talk a little bit about your background, and you're obviously an author among other things.
Sure.
So I'll put your website up here. Maybe I just had it working.
Yeah, I can see it.
You can see it, okay.
Yep.
There we go. That is the wrong one, isn't it? Oh boy, I apologize.
It's
I hit
okay.
the wrong. There we go. Well, anyway, why don't we start with your books, and I'll try and get this. I don't know what I hit. I hit a wrong button somewhere. At any rate.
It's okay. We can just talk about it. They don't have to.
Okay.
No worries.
Well, I do apologize for that. I don't know what I hit there. So the website is called loneprairie.net. And so I noticed on your website, your 4 books, one was about the protest down there in Mandan that we had in, like, I think that was 2015, 16, wasn't it?
Somewhere I think so. Somewhere in there, yep.
And so you just want to talk a little bit about your books?
Sure. The first book I wrote, that was before the protest book, and it's about North Dakota. Just stories and poems and images and things that have to do with North Dakota, essays, that kind of thing. And then several years later, the protest happened, and so then I wrote a book about that. Did some interviews with people involved, law enforcement, all kinds of things. And so then I wanted to make a kind of a history, because I felt like it wasn't going to be accurately remembered or portrayed. So it's kind of a thick book with very tiny print that I have a hard time reading now. But and then my latest book was last fall. I published that one, and that is about the pandemic and just some of the things from kind of a local perspective. And again, it's images, blog posts, articles, that kind of thing. And it's just cool. It's kind of a conservative view and some of the crazy stuff that went on, so that we didn't forget.
Okay. So she's got a lot of things on there, not just her books. She's got her artwork and different things like that. So I encourage you guys all to check that out at loneprairie.net. So let's get into the article. So
sure.
You recently went to the reorg, and now this was your first reorg that you attended, correct?
Yes, it is. I'm not super political. Every once in a while, I'll write something that'll ping back up on the radar and there'll be a little bit of fuss, but I'm not really what I would consider a political person. And so I hadn't really gone to a reorg meeting before. And a friend and we were invited to go, and okay, I thought I would do that. I'm curious. I always like to, experience something. It's something new to write about. So we went, and I think we're going to be talking about this specifically when we talk about, what happened at the meeting. We went with the idea of like, well, we kind of know who we want to vote for. But when I got there, I was rather surprised because the only names on the ballots were the incumbents. And so at that point, I thought, well, why am I even here? Because clearly it's not a big deal. And then things changed. So we can get into that later. But yeah, I was invited, and that was the first one I had been to. And I thought it was going to be something interesting. And it was, in a different way.
Yeah. So you want to kind of go into that, what you meant by a different way?
Sure. So, I had heard from a friend and others in other districts about, some interesting, I'll just use interesting meetings that had happened. And I would like to say right now that people on both sides of the political spectrum can be very unkind. And so one of the reasons I wasn't very politically active after about 2021, even as little as I had been before, was because I got a taste of it from some people that you would have thought were on my side. And I write about that in my pandemic book, like, let's stop being so ugly and childish. And so,
Right.
I'd heard that some reorganization meetings had been crazy, wild, quite interesting. And I just, I wanted to go. And so we got there, and it actually seemed pretty tame. And, I walk in, there's, I'd say maybe, I'm terrible at estimating, but maybe about 150 or so people. Not everybody that was there to vote. Some were just observing. And so we check in, we sit down. Everything seemed fine. There were posters taped on the back of chairs to vote for a specific person for a treasurer, and this person wasn't on the ballot. And I don't know enough about the rules, but I remember thinking, well, this is weird because I'm used to, on election day, you don't have campaign materials or anything, and these were just plastered all over. And so at first I thought, well, maybe the rules are different. They must be. It just seemed odd. And I thought, oh, okay, so there's going to be a few people that aren't on the ballot. But I looked at the ballot, and I looked at the brochure that we had, and everybody that was already currently serving, they were the only ones on the ballot. And so I just thought, oh, well, this is nice. We'll just have a nice community meeting, and great. And the first thing was an amendment. They voted on an amendment, and that was kind of my first hint that something was, maybe there was an undercurrent of something. And the amendment had to do with requiring the legislators in District 30 to meet with their constituents within 3 months, I think, of when session would start. And that they did a voice vote, and it passed very clearly. I mean, there were some no's, but it was clearly passed. And then somebody had asked, why do you need to do this? Can't we just trust that the executive committee or whatever, that they'll do this on their own? And the comment was made, well, the people who might be coming after us might not do it. And so we want it as an amendment. And that was kind of my first thought of, maybe not everybody gets along here. And then the voting began, and then I saw it.
Yeah. So obviously they did the chair first.
Actually they didn't. The chair went last. So it actually in my little brochure here. Yeah, they started in a different order. And that actually kind of made for a nice climactic ending to leave the chair for last. Yeah.
So in your article, you there's two different groups. There's the new group, and then there's the old. I don't remember what you called them.
I called them the old guard, and then
the old guard and the new guard.
Re-election were the new guard because they had just fresh faces from the past 2 years. Yeah.
Okay, so they started with which position did they start with?
Well, the chair seemed to be last. I think they started backwards. Maybe they went with treasurer first. or maybe it was first vice chair. I can't remember the specific order, but the chair was last because it was kind of a nice moment.
Okay. So as they're doing these elections, and I don't know if we want to go through them one by one. Was it getting more tense in the room then, or was it tense right away when they started the voting?
Well, before the voting happened, each officer got to give a little report, like what they had done the past couple of years, and it was pretty amicable, and it was interesting actually. They'd done quite a bit. I was impressed, and not being terribly involved, I'm ashamed to say, I didn't know they were doing these things, and also I'm not on Facebook, and that makes a big deal. I don't really go on there anymore. So, but anyway, so they had done these kind of updates or reports, and just in the way they said things or in the things they said, I started to get a picture like, something didn't go right these past 2 years. They mentioned they had difficulty to get access to the district bank account and that they never did. Well, that seemed odd to me. Like, is it a banking issue? Should we be concerned? Or was there something else? They said they didn't have access to all of the contact lists. And, you start to hear these things and you think, what kind of breakdown happened here? Because that shouldn't happen when you transfer power from the former elected people to the newly ones. That should just be passed on, but it didn't seem like it was. And I don't know enough information about it because it wasn't spoken clearly, but it was there. And so then the election started, and all the people that were nominated, or all the people that won except one, they were all nominated from the floor. That's fine. You can do that, obviously, but there had been, from what I could understand, a nominating meeting. So I wonder, well, why didn't you participate in that with the current district leadership? That just seems strange. Did you not know about the meeting? Did the people not get their act together? I mean, why was there no one else on the ballot? Why were all these new people completely nominated from the floor? And I guess I got the sense that the people who had been kicked out, if you want to use that word, because that kind of gets alluded to later, my sense was, correct me if I'm wrong, they didn't want to participate or help the new people in any way. And it's almost like they didn't see them as legitimate leadership, in that apparently they didn't pass things on or even participate. Now, I don't know if that's true because nobody came right out and said it, but that just seemed like what was happening. And it seemed odd that were nominated from the floor, all of them. And, I got to point this out. There was a woman there, and I'm not going to say her name. She does get mentioned in the footnotes. She was handing out sheets of paper, and they were very well made. It was a long listing, every single name that they were going to replace every single person with. So this was planned. And so when it's something that planned, you think you couldn't get them nominated and on the ballot properly.
All right.
So it just seemed really odd.
So were your representatives there then? Were the district representatives? Yep.
Senator Larson was there, and she, participated in everything. And she actually said that she'd stick around afterwards and answer people's questions. And I wasn't there at the end, but I assume she did because she seemed very agreeable to do that. She was fine. She didn't really make a vocal presence during the meeting, but she was there. I don't know if Bosch was there. I'll be honest, I don't know if I could pick him out in the crowd. I have to assume he might have been, but I wasn't paying attention to him, as you will find out. Nath was there, if that's how you say his name. Nathy. He was there, and he gets a fair number of paragraphs in the blog post because I got to see him in action, and that was disgusting.
Yeah. Okay, so we start the elections, and as you go, I'm assuming from what I read that basically the old guard got put back in. Is that correct?
Either, I don't know enough of who was there when they were unelected. They weren't elected in 2021, but I would say either they were put back in or people they deemed appropriate were put back in. Okay. The people on that sheet of paper were, for the most part. Now, there was, the chair wasn't, and there were some of the at-large people that weren't. Some of the new people did stay on.
Okay, so the chair. Let's talk about the chair. Who are the two candidates?
I don't remember who was running against the one the current and the sitting one, because I didn't. I wasn't writing this down, and I didn't have the piece of paper, and of course there wasn't anything on the ballot, and they had
Any
him up on the
information?
screen. Yeah, so I don't recall,
Okay.
to be honest. But the one who
Okay.
was there currently was Justice Amundsen. He was the young fellow that was elected in 2021, and he was reelected. It was close,
Cool.
but it was a big deal, and that's why I say I'm glad they saved it for the end, because it was a nice moment.
Okay, well, you want to describe that moment for us?
Sure. I would say this to anyone, and I'm not going to hammer on people, but if you're given a microphone, use it. Pull it right in front of your mouth and speak clearly. And so I think one of the struggles, and I'm not, not everyone's cut out for public speaking, but I think some people have a difficulty separating message from messenger or the message style. And so I'm sure there were people there who just thought, that person is a little more, they're a little more eloquent, so I'm going to vote for them. They're probably more skilled. So there could have been some of that in play. But when Justice got up to the microphone, some of the other speeches, they were kind of off the cuff, if you will. But he got up there and he said, I have 2 minutes, and what I'm going to say isn't going to make anyone happy, but I'm going to say it. And he did. He just kind of laid out what was going on, how our legislators had voted, specifically Nathan Bosch,
Bosch, yeah.
And he later sent out an email, which I include in the blog post so people could look it up. I mean, the way they voted was, I'll be honest, I was surprised. You get in that trap of you just check the box next to R. Well, I'll tell you what, I won't be voting for those two again.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, the vote came in, and it was close. But and here's a fun thing: when Justice got done with his speech, the whole place just erupted into cheers and clapping. And during the previous elections, there was some of that from the group that was kicking out the new people. They were like, whoo, and cheering, and they were so happy. But when Justice got done, it felt more like more of the room did it. And then there's some whispers behind me, and I'm not going to say it on the podcast, but you can go and read about it. And they were really impressed by this young fellow. And so it was kind of nice. Like, I'm glad to see that we have new young people that are still going to stick with it, that we don't have to just go back to the old sanctioned, allowed, preferred family names or whatever, that we can get some new blood in there, and that people kept him because he was really sharp. He ran the meeting well. He was very self-controlled and professional, and he spoke very clearly on the issues. I think he was an excellent choice, and I'm glad people did vote for him.
Cool. Yeah, Mike, I'm getting some comments here, and it sounds like Bosch was there, and then we've got this comment from Mike Blessums that Diane Larson's husband Greg ran against Justice. So that's who ran against him. So was there anyone else from the new guard that was able to stay in?
I think, like I say, some of the at-large people were, and I'm not going to be positive on these because I wasn't there when they were finally called out, but I think Josh Gallion, Dave Charles, Adam Rose, Charles Dave, however you say his name, for sure. I think those were brought back in, and then there might have been a couple others, and these were the at-large folks. But then there were also some from the old guard. They got their names in particular. I can't think of her name. It's a hyphenated last name. She got back in the at-large group, and she was the one that was handing out the lists of nominations. So she was part of it. And I want to say there's nothing wrong with going in and saying, hey, everybody, these are the people we want you to vote for. Fine. But the point was, why was Nathan so heavily involved? And maybe Bosch was too, and I just didn't realize it because I could only see what was right in front of me. But why was he so openly involved? He's supposed to represent everybody, even the people he might not like.
Sherry Haugland Hoffert.
Yeah, that was the one. I think she was the one maybe handing out the lists of nominations.
Okay. Well, in some, like up here in District 2, we didn't have much participation like that from our 3 legislators, but there are some of them. Well, case in point, your 3 down there. There's a lot of them that do participate, and that's just, they call it tradition, but I don't know. I mean, kind of seems like it's a conflict of interest to me, but at any
It's
rate,
not like a conflict to me because, like I say, in the blog post, we have Representative Armstrong. He comes, he's there, and while they're counting votes, he stands up and gives this sort of awkward, weird rally, rah. Hey, none of us are enemies. We need to be united. We need to, Republicans need to be united. Blah blah blah. He sits down, and this stuff starts. And you think, okay, the actual representatives of this district, the Republicans that are supposed to be representing us, they are participating in not unity. Well, and they're helping it. So it's one thing to be there and to place your vote. Just because you're representative doesn't mean you can't vote. But I think it's not appropriate for them to be egging this on. And then also, right. At least from what I could gather, Diane Larson said she would stick around and talk. I don't know about Bosch because I don't know. But as you saw in my blog post, he didn't stick around. He took off. Now, right. If you're going to be there and you're going to create a lack of unity, the least you could do is stick around and talk to your people because you literally are a representative, not a wrecking ball.
Look, and before we get into that, I got 2 questions. So you just talked about Kelly Armstrong. After he stood up and gave his great hurrah speech, what was the mood like? Like, how did people take that? Did they boo him? Did they clap? What was the mood like?
I don't really remember because at the time I didn't realize this was going on. I just thought it was odd. Like, why is Kelly Armstrong here doing this? This seems weird. And I think if I had been aware of what was coming, I would have paid more attention to the response. I suppose there was maybe polite applause. I don't really know. I don't recall.
Right. Okay. So, like Kelly Armstrong, and I remember when before the election here in 22, they were going around to these reorg meetings too, meaning Armstrong and my mind just went blank.
Like Kramer
the Attorney General, Drew Wrigley.
Oh, okay.
All them guys that were up for election, and then the Secretary of State, Mike Howe, he was there. So at District 33, which was down in Hazen 2 years ago, when the election before 22 was going on, and this was their reorg, all them guys showed up. And Jessica Bell was running for re-election. She was their sitting senator, and Keith Boehm actually won that in 22. So anyway, they were down there and they were doing their speeches, and it was basically the same thing. They were pushing. They showed up for Jessica because they had the coal guns and all that going on, and the 3 faces of coal is what they called themselves. And Kelly Armstrong was one of them. And anyway, so that is, they got their people, and so they're going to show up for their people to make sure that they don't lose their power, and that's some of why they do this. But so at any rate, moving on, so they have the election for the chair, and Justice wins. So what's the mood like after that?
Well, when it was announced, we were in the process of, because it took a while to count because they were counting the ballots. Mm-hmm. And so when his was announced, I think we were in the process of voting the at-large. But when it was announced, there was a lot of cheering and hooting and hollering,
Yep.
But as I pointed out, by that point, I had kind of picked out the people who were behaving poorly.
Yeah.
And their faces weren't happy. They'd had victories all night long, but they sure didn't like the fact that the chair stayed with that young man. I'm hoping, as I put in the end of my blog post, that perhaps they will be able to now work together. And look, I don't know what happened at the 2020 meeting. Nathan made it sound like it was a friggin' bar brawl, and you call the cops, and people. I don't know. Maybe not. I'm guessing if you talk to some other people, you're going to have some very different descriptions.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know what happened there, but we're adults. That was 2 years ago. Get over yourself.
Yep.
Okay. If you're going to lead people, if you're going to be a public servant, and I want to point out that it's public service, not public lordship. So serve your people. Don't play games and try to jerk them around and get rid of them. And, the big quote for me was when we went out, my friend and I, we kind of almost had to chase Nathan down. I mean, we were leaving too, but it was clear he was leaving quickly.
Yeah.
His quote was, when we asked, why did you make such a concerted effort to get rid of all of them? It's fine that you have your people, but it was clear there was something different going on. And when I asked him, his response was, they took it from us, so we took it back. Well, that's something you like to hear your local representative say about your people in your district, that it's his, it's theirs,
Right.
it's theirs to have.
So if I could just say this is District 30, and we had somebody comment on here that Kelly Armstrong lives in District 30, so he had every right to be there.
I did not know that. That's good to know.
I didn't know that either.
Well, good for him for showing up.
Showing up, right?
Yeah.
So, but this was at a school, correct? In Bismarck.
Yeah, it was Solheim Elementary School, yeah.
And you're thinking that there's about 150 people there, somewhere in there, give or take?
I'm terrible at estimating. The official tally for people who were able to vote, I think it was 137, and then there was quite a few that kind of were standing around the wall and in the back just observing people have had interest. So I'm going to guess 150.
So to me, and I don't know how many people are in your district, but it's in Bismarck, so I'm assuming quite a few. And if you're only getting that many people, I mean, let's just round it up to a couple hundred. Sure. And you're only getting that many people. In my mind, I guess it kind of speaks to, number one, either people aren't involved and not paying attention, or they think that poorly of your three representatives that they can't muster. I mean, so take, for instance, up here in District 2. 2 years ago, we were, I was a part of one of those groups who made the calls and different things and was helping. We had almost 400 people show up, and that was in Tioga. So if we can get that many to show up in Tioga to vote, I mean, out of that 400, I think there was close to 300 of them there that were eligible voters. So of course we had our visitors and
sure,
and stuff like that too. But yeah, I mean, most of them could, 3/4 of them could vote. And you're telling me in a district where Bismarck is, they can only pull a couple hundred people? I don't know that.
Well, I mean,
and there's, go ahead.
This was the first time I had been there because I was invited. So why haven't I come before? I don't know. I just didn't really know about it. And if you're not on Facebook anymore, if you're, I mean, I found this in other community things too. You just don't really know what's going on. You don't even know what the weather, if there's the news. I mean, it's a weird thing. So there's that. There was that whole thing where, and I don't know the details because it wasn't clearly put out, but somehow the new group of leaders didn't have access or didn't have the contact list or something. And I thought, well, that kind of makes it difficult to contact your people. So there's that. You've got a lot of apartments in our district. Maybe there's just a lot of transitory folks and they're not, I don't know.
Yeah.
2021 was a different year than 2023. 2021 was a year of significant anger. I mean, it's not that it isn't now, but the things that were going on after, during the pandemic and all the craziness, people were highly motivated. So I don't know if that's dwindled. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear you there. And I think too, I think the election process kind of has people at a crossroads too. I mean, I know we had Dr. Frank up here and we did those seminars around the state. And, it was interesting because when they came in, they were very skeptical about the elections and what had taken place and different things. And then he started talking and actually showing the numbers on what they were doing. And you could see the emotion go from not quite sure, is this guy a conspiracy theorist, to, okay, this is making sense. Now, what do we do about it? So I guess what I'm trying to say is I think that you're exactly right. There was a lot of anger, but if we as grassroots people can keep getting the message out there, I think it's just the wildfire is going to start. So
it's possible, after the things that happened in 2020 and then 2021, you sort of, you get disheartened, and kind of like I said, I wasn't very much into politics, and some of the things that occurred in 2021 made me even less inclined. And I didn't really understand how all this district stuff worked,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even reorganizational meeting. Well, what does that have to do with me? I'm not doing any, I'm not an
Right.
official, so I don't need to be there. I mean, I didn't get it. And
Yep.
it's still not maybe clear, what is the value of having the leadership? What can they change? Is the only way to get rid of bad representation simply at the ballot box? Is the ballot box even valid? How can you fight against these big name people with the money and the name and the power, and you're just,
You have to get people
going to get shoved into the locker after school.
Yep. You have to get people to show up. The reorg meetings are, in my view, from kind of being around it now for 3 years, the reorg meetings are valuable because with that leadership there, like your chairmans, they go to, and they're the ones that vote on who the party chair is for the convention and different things like that. And so, and they do play a big part in how your reorgs run, how your elections are ran in your district. And so, and believe me, there's been, Minot's had horror stories. They're all over the state. There's been horror stories on those district meetings, not wanting to follow rules, not wanting to follow Robert's Rule of Order. It's pick your battle. Most of them have been a dumpster fire. So good leadership like that is going to have their stuff in a group and be ready, kind of like they did, it sounds like, here in District 30 with the lists and different things like that. Now there's nothing wrong with that. I'll be honest with you, we did that in District 2 as well. We had our information on the seats on who to vote for and why, and and I think the establishment, you could say, was they didn't see it coming. And so,
No, not them, but I think they learned from you. And I don't have a problem with that. And I would like to point out, and this is interesting, some of those races that the new guard lost, they were by one or two votes. And literally some people filled out their ballot wrong. And it was somebody not understanding how to correctly check a box on their ballot that the race wasn't tied or was lost. It was that close. If you just had a few more people, it would have been a totally different story. And so that's why I'm always wary when, when Nathan says, well, 2021, they weren't really, that didn't mean anything. It was just 100 angry people showed up. That's not what the people really wanted. Well, it's 100 angry people. Those are people. And I don't know if they have the groundswell of support they think they have. Maybe they do, but we don't know because it was pretty close voting that night.
Yeah.
And if he's not going to talk to people, he'll never really know outside of his group. And he didn't really want to talk to me. And he didn't really want to talk to people. So you don't know.
And that just goes to show you that, I don't know if you want to call it the arrogance or the entitlement, because let's face it, a lot of our representatives are entitled. Pick your district. They are entitled. With ours, our three were mad that they didn't get a free chair to go to the convention 2 years ago. It was, you had to be nominated, to the point where they even had Perry Schaefer call our chairman, and he wanted our chairman to remove duly elected representatives for the convention and put our three representatives and their wives on so they could go as delegates to the convention. So, you can't make this stuff up, Julie. You can't. And so, I guess that's kind of where that lies. So did Nathan give a speech then before the elections or
No,
not?
and I don't
No.
even. No, he was actually just sitting in the audience, a couple rows ahead of me, which is how I saw this all go down. And I don't even remember who pointed out that that's who he was, because at first I just thought, boy, that guy's kind of a jerk. And
So you had. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, so you had a reorg meeting, and did any of your representatives stand up and give?
I felt like Diane Larson spoke. I don't remember if it was in response to a question or during the discussion on that amendment, but she didn't give a report but she did speak. And then that's when somebody said, would you be willing to stay around after and talk about, and she said, yes, I would. But like I say, I don't even know if Bosch was there, because he didn't give a report or anything. I didn't even know if they're supposed to. I really don't know. I only knew about Nathan because he was very aggressive in nominating people and pushing this whole, let's take this back forward. And when I found out who he was, I was extremely disgusted. Like, in that moment, I just said, I don't care if I have to vote for a donkey. I will before I'll vote for Nathan, because I'm not going to look in the mirror and say I voted for that man. Because he's cruel, he was mean, and it was so unprofessional. Like, you're representing me from my district. Yeah, this is an adult professional behavior. I was just appalled.
And I'm sure you'll be appalled when you see his voting record too after they come out.
Well, Justice shared some of it, and I certainly was. And then I just thought to myself, I'm just as bad as everyone else. You go into the voting booth and you're not aware of everything, and you just like, well, who do I vote for? I guess I'll just vote for the R or whatever.
Right.
So, and we all know North Dakota has the issue where if you're a Democrat, you barely get elected, so you just call yourself a Republican. And I would say Nathan's voting record was far more liberal than most people would believe. When that email came out the next day from Justice outlining what he'd voted for, I was sick. And they try to say, well, it was a bad bill, we're going to do it better next time. Stop. I'm not stupid. Okay, you're voting for interests in a way that don't reflect me, and I cannot have you as my representative with my vote because you don't represent me anymore. Yeah, I'm done with you.
Well, good for you. So
I'm voting for my sister's dog. Literally, District 30, get your people together, because I'm not voting for Nathan Bosch.
There you go.
My dog is going to get the vote.
There you go. So after all the voting was done, he just got up and took off then, or how did that all
play? Okay, obviously, so the last vote was, it takes a while to hand count these votes, and they did a really great job being very careful. And so the last election was the at-large people, and so you could vote for up to 10. So that was going to be a complicated vote count. And so it was getting kind of late. And so my friend and I, we did what a lot of people did. We put in our vote for the final at-large part of the election. And then once people dropped it in the ballot or the little tub, they just left because they had placed their vote, and they found out later who won or whatever. And I didn't realize it then because we were just walking out. But when I got outside, I saw Nathan and some of the other folks that I'd observed, and they have every right to leave those other people. But why would he, the representative, leave before the people did? I mean, Diane Larson, unless I missed her, she stuck around. As far as I'm aware, she said she was going to. And so he was out the door, and he was walking, and we were walking to our vehicle, and it was kind of dark, and I turned and I saw him, and I thought, he's leaving. I have a couple questions I'd like to ask him, I guess. I mean, he's standing right, so I kind of go down the sidewalk, and he wasn't real thrilled to see me. Shocker. Yeah. So
right. Yeah, but there again, there's the entitlement of how dare you question me, right? I mean,
I've, as a reporter and just, writing the pipeline book and just the different things I've done in my life. And I'm kind of an introverted person. I don't like confrontation. And I actually don't really like being around people. I'd be a terrible politician. I just don't, But for me to I felt like I had to go talk to that guy. I had to go talk to Nathan because it just, something wasn't right, and he was leaving. And I'm naive enough to think that if you're a public servant, you shouldn't hate the public. You cannot serve people you hate.
Right.
And maybe he doesn't hate. Let's just take that back. Let's say you can't serve people you really don't like. I mean, you have to find a way to serve them. And
well, do you think that it's that he dislikes them, or it's just that he doesn't want to be held accountable? Because a lot of these people,
it's hard to read people, and it was kind of a stressful night. And let's give him this out. You get kind of in these confrontational type settings, which I guess the whole evening kind of had been in a sense for him. You get kind of an adrenaline thing going, and you just get kind of amped up. And so seeing some chick run down the sidewalk saying, "Hey, I want to talk to you and ask you something," that's probably not a great moment.
Yeah. True enough. But on this,
Diane Larson, I didn't see it, but she did say she would stay and talk. He never even threw that bone out there. He left.
Yeah. Yeah, at least she had the gall to stay, and even though she knew what was coming, she stayed.
She did. I mean, unless somebody there saw her leave early too. I didn't. I could be wrong, but it's one thing to have somebody, I could stand in front of, I don't know, Diane Larson and say, "Look, I don't agree how you voted on this, or this." But if she's willing to stand there and hear me, at least we can come to some agreement where I might say, "Look, because you don't really represent the way I want you to vote, I simply cannot vote for you anymore. But at least you're trying to be a public servant and hear me."
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So, and I'm not saying she did or didn't do that, but that would be the model. Like, you're right, we're not going to agree, and I simply can't continue to vote for you, but thank you for listening. Not, I don't want to be recorded. Basically just go away and leave me alone. I've got places to go. He never said that, but it was just, there was a sense like, right. When are you going to leave me alone?
Yeah. Gotcha. Well, with that, is there anything else that you'd like to say or about that night, about the reorg, or anything that we didn't bring up that you feel is important?
I think I said it a lot in the blog post. I wrote that. I started writing it immediately that evening. And of course, the draft, or what gets published, is violently different from the initial writing, because I was pretty upset. And that's just part of the process. You start weeding it out, and you're like, okay, I don't really want to put that out there. I'm not trying to attack people unless there's something concerning and blah, blah, blah. So I feel like I want to be sure that what I said was accurate as far as what I was able to observe and infer. The quotes I got from Nathy are accurate, even though he wouldn't let me record him. I want to say to people, public officials on public property at public meetings, you do your thing. You can use your phone and record. I mean, I gave him some courtesy, and I didn't receive it back.
Yep.
And so, but those quotes are on, and I felt that what he said there was a reflection of what was going on, and it was ugly to say, they took it from us, we took it back. Well, I don't care if Kelly Armstrong comes up and does a ballet dance about unity. That's garbage, because there's no unity when you think us and them. That's a three-party system then.
Yep. Where can people find your blog at?
Well, you can just go to my website, and I think there's a link up at the top, and it says blog.
Okay.
You can also go to julieneidlinger.com, but good luck spelling my name right. Just go to loneprairie.net. It's fine.
There you go.
Do that way.
And the easy way too is for the article that we're talking about. I have the link on the advertisement for the show, so you can go on Here's the Deal Facebook page and click on the link there as well too, and it'll take you to the article that we're talking about, and it was properly titled, "This is Why People Hate Politics." I like that. That was pretty good. And it's always nice, for pardon when I say this, newcomers or new people that go to this stuff for the first time, to see it through their eyes. Even myself, I'm new to it too. I've only been to 2 district reorgs, in the last 2.5, 3 years. So, and I will continue to be active as well. So, but I really thank you for your time. It was great talking with you, and we'll have to do this again. I'm going to be following you and following your blogs, and we'll have to do this again. I really appreciate your time.
Yes, thank you for having me. And I just wanted to tell people, get involved, but do it with kindness and self-control.
That is excellent.
Yeah.
That is excellent. And that is Julie with loneprairie.net, and you can go and check her stuff out on our website at loneprairie.net. So thanks everybody, and we'll see you next week.